Hello, everybody. This is Matt, your local friendly gamer, and it's been a while since we did one of these. So today we are going to have a discussion video regarding digital preservation. I am joined by my best friend and old college roommate Phil, and I'm also joined today by Reeve, who goes by Revolution on YouTube and Twitch. So, just introduce yourselves quickly, everybody.
Hi everyone, I'm Phil.
And I am Reeve.
All right. So, this is something that I've been kind of meaning to talk more about a little bit sooner, but I think since it wasn't that long ago, like maybe like a little, still less than a month ago, that the Nintendo 3DS and Wii U eShops have now officially closed. As far as I understand, you can only re-download stuff there. You can no longer purchase ad funds or purchase anything. You're pretty much your only choice is pretty much to emulate 3DS and Wii U titles going forward, as far as I understood correctly, right?
Yep.
Phil, you're a little low.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Barely.
Uh-oh.
Might want to turn your input up a little bit.
How about now?
Yeah, that's better.
Perfect. Yeah, I had my volume wheel on the side.
Okay. So yeah, and it kind of goes, it kind of raises the question again, especially in terms that, you know, a lot of services, not just gaming, are focusing on heading towards more of a digital versus a physical direction. And I believe, Phil, we kind of had a bit of a discussion about that a while back. Mm-hmm. But now, the question is, well, how is all of this media spanning back countless decades, how is that being preserved? And if it's being preserved, are the proper measures taken to ensure there's like no loss of quality, or if there has to be loss of quality in some regard, how is that like kept to a minimum? So, if either of you want to kind of start the discussion by bringing your initial thoughts into the matter, whether it's specifically the recent eShop closures for the last generation of Nintendo platforms, or anything else at all, like any other examples, immediate examples that that you can think of that kind of showcase just kind of how just any sort of media, gaming or otherwise, is not really being preserved to the best of its ability.
I would start with the Nintendo eShop, going all the way back to the Wii console, mm-hmm. where we had the ability to buy like NES, SNES, Wii, like different like games, both games and demos back in the day too. And then as soon as that shop closed, they didn't really offer really many really good alternatives for that, even back when the Wii was there. I was hoping that they were going to bring it back for the Nintendo Switch, even if it was like a port of their storefront. Mm-hmm. I was hoping they would bring that back over. But when they didn't, what's kind of occurring now is, especially for like those NES games, like those older games, mm-hmm. there's no way to purchase those digitally really, unless you have one of the older systems that has those games already built in. You buy an emulator system, or you or unless like Nintendo actually like re-releases those type of games for the what's it called, like the online subscription service. But even then, you're kind of at the the hopes and wishes of like, are they going to upload it in like the monthly updates that they have? And normally they'll like include like 1, 2, or 3 maybe, and then if it's not one of those 3, you either wait longer or you just really don't have a way to play those. And I guess not just Nintendo as well too, even the Sega games, which they're trying to bring back on the Nintendo platform, but there are a lot of missing Nintendo games that aren't being shared in that service either. And then we also don't have a good way to purchase those. Even in like those Sega collections, they don't
Mhm.
have like, you might want a really specific game and there's no way to actually purchase that anymore.
Yeah. How about you, Reeve?
Well, it kind of comes down to a comparison. Say for instance, what Sony has had with the PS3. Like, you still have the option to buy all of those like games on their storefront. You just can't add like, any sort of currency by like the card or by a credit card or whatever. You have to go through like the PS4 or PS5 storefront or even on the website and add funds from there in order to buy anything from the old PS3. Or I think it's the same with the Vita storefront too, because the PSP one they actually shut down because you can still buy PSP games on your Vita.
Yep.
But that's neither here nor there. Like now they're
Yeah, and I
actually,
think last year they were even considering shutting down the PS3 store too, but they didn't
Yeah.
due to backlash.
Yeah, the Vita and the PS3 were both kind of at risk of being shut
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's like a temporary change, but that's just like an example of if you're still not going to have the ability to add funds, at least have the ability to purchase them, even if you have to add the funds through some other method. Which brings back to like the case where like on PS5 they're slowly adding these different legacy games that you could play on the previous systems, but now you can on the new ones. You have the option of like their subscription service or to buy them individually, which is something I feel like Nintendo should allow with their NSO service. Like if there are only certain games you want, you should have the ability to purchase them. Because I'm sure there are some people that, hey, maybe they only want to play like the Zelda games, like they just want like Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Link to the Past, or if they just want like Banjo Kazooie or GoldenEye, that's all they really want to play, and they don't want to bother with the whole $50 subscription just to play like say those N64 titles.
Yeah,
so
just like a way to pay for them online,
Yeah,
I
even
pay
like,
for them and play them offline. I meant.
Yeah, because like even what Phil was saying about some games not being available on the more modern platforms, like we take a look at what the Wii had compared to a majority of games that did move over to the Wii U, but you have ones like Mario RPG, Chrono Trigger, those never went past the Wii for Nintendo systems. They're locked to that system even after the Wii Shop channel shut down, so it was never on the Wii U eShop, never on the 3DS eShop. Neither are still not available on the Switch at all. I think the only way that you can legally, get Mario RPG is, getting it from a reseller, or if you're lucky enough to find SNES Classic. And then with Chrono Trigger, again, it's just like find it from a reseller with that, or even like the DS copy or the PS1 copy. And they also had like a Steam or mobile version of Chrono Trigger, but from what I heard, those aren't exactly the best ports. They have some issues. I don't know if fan mods ever sorted those things out, because I don't really think Square has updated that title in years, but just examples of games that have been kind of left behind and not ported to future platforms.
Yeah, and I think kind of there's a little bit of a disconnect as far as like finding a reseller and stuff, because as far as like certain countries, mainly Japan's full of video game resellers. It is very easy to get an older system with older games and have them be at still working quality when you go, because Japan is full of those shops. They have an entire district full of that. Akihabara, I think
it's
that's
Akihabara.
the Akihabara, yeah, that's the district that's kind of known for that. The US used to have that, but we kind of don't anymore. Like GameStop is like the closest we have to that, and even then it is very limited. Like you're lucky to get like used games of like the current generation and maybe a generation and two before. But yeah, a lot of the mom and pop shops just aren't around anymore, you know. Yeah, you have to like go to like various like, you know, cities and metropolitan areas to even find one. And of course, if you find one, you gotta hope that the devices and the games that you get still work.
Right.
Yeah, and even then, you have to be careful of reproduction cards because some of them aren't legitimate copies of the game.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I just actually ran into that same thing with buying a copy of Pokemon Emerald. One was on an auction site, and I was like, "Oh, that's a good price. Maybe I should get that one." And like, I was looking at a YouTube video of a comparison, and that's the only way I was able to see like it was a reproduction card of it. They didn't label it as a reproduction; they labeled it as the official one.
So yeah, basically, they basically kind of got an emulated copy working on a cartridge, and we're trying to sell it off as a real copy.
Yep.
Yeah, which is man, it's stuff like that where it's like it's why emulation in general is kind of in kind of a risky footing, because you know it's like emulation is kind of a big way that you can only play certain games, especially games that, you know, were the games that built up certain franchises. You know, a lot of, say, Pokemon games, for instance, you're going to have to emulate if you don't own an original copy at this point, because used Pokemon games resale for obnoxious amounts. And Game Freak and Nintendo really liked to drag their feet when it came to, you know, either porting it or, you know, remaking it, their older games, because it's like it took forever for the first two generations of Pokemon to be in a virtual console for the 3DS, which you can't get anymore.
I think it was like 2016 when they were first finally added to the 3DS.
Yeah, and the 3DS was out since 2011. So yeah, and I get that. Yeah, you have to kind of find a way to like have a virtual link cable functionality for games that, you know, for the longest time relied on a physical link cable. But it's like you're the largest franchise on the planet. How do you not have the resources to figure that out?
Right.
But that, yeah, and of course, when some companies, you know, do port a lot of their older games, they usually do it in a way that doesn't really seem like it's faithful, or kind of ruins the experience. Like the biggest modern example to that was the supposed remaster of the trilogy of games that made up Grand Theft Auto 3.
Oh, yeah.
Where they basically kind of made those by the lowest common denominator, and not only did they made a lousy remaster, they also took like they also delisted like the actual working original, so you can only get the remaster, which was, you know, that is just borderline malicious.
Yeah, even on their own PC storefront, they did the same there too.
Yeah.
But Matt, it was a definitive edition. They had to keep it just. No, I'm just kidding.
No. There was nothing definitive about that.
Yeah, it was just reworked versions of the mobile ports they had from years ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, Square technically kind of did that with 7, 8, and 9. Well, not 8, 7, and 9, but at least they at least worked a bit better.
That actually brings up a really good point too, Matt. It's like it's important to not only preserve like even if they make newer games, it's still important to preserve the older ones, because sometimes the source game has either different features, of the original music. I know for Tony Hawk there were like some things like, well, would all the music be ported over to the newer edition because it was licensing
issues. Yeah,
so it's like it's always good to still have available the original Tony Hawks, for example, even if they're remaking it for the new consoles too.
Yeah.
So there should be some sort of like option, like you were saying with the Grand Theft Auto, to both buy the new version but still have the old version available to purchase I actually remember as a kid, you know.
Yeah, and props to people that actually, go through like actually preserving them on their own. But I mean, that kind of runs into a lot of other issues. It's like, one, it's unofficial. You know, they weren't exactly brought on by the companies themselves, which then leads into 2. It's in a very legal dark gray area. It's like it gets lighter if they don't sell it, but as soon as they like start selling it, that's that's just straight up piracy at that point. And of course, there are people that, you know, will risk poking the bear and kind of ruin it across the board just so that they can make a living off of providing ROMs that they shouldn't be providing in the first place. Which kind of stinks because, you know, there are a lot of good emulators available for all sorts of different platforms that have been around long enough that have been tried, true, tested, and even been getting like their own nice updates and all that. And some recent ones that, you know, yeah, there's still some bugs here and there, but they're still proving worthy in their own right. Like, you know, Citra, the 3DS emulator, has been making strides, and, you know, there's a lot of other reliable ones for arcade, for arcade systems, for the classic NES, SNES, N64, Game Boy family of systems, DS, PlayStation 1, 2, portable, you know, the original Xbox. And I think there's even like a good, and of course Dolphin does GameCube and Wii. And I think there's, even a good 360 PS3 emulator now. Although a lot of the games that were made available for 360 and PS3, even though they are available on digital storefronts, I think they require like a lot of kind of software that isn't really compatible with modern systems anymore.
Yep.
Unfortunately, like, and they don't work on the newer versions of the hardware of similar hardware or software, which kind of stinks. Like, if I want to play the Mass Effect trilogy, I have to play the remastered one, because the original one will not work with Windows 10 at all. Like, you're probably lucky to get the first one working, but the second and the third one, forget it. I mean, thankfully the remaster is good. They didn't screw up the remaster, but yeah, definitely not the original 2 and 3. Is the immediate example that I can think of.
And I was just thinking, I guess, related to all of that too, like, I guess, because with Mass Effect being your example too, one example I have that I wanted to mention too is the, like, Smash Brothers Melee, for example, and how, how a ton of people want to play that in its, like, original form. And I like you mentioned before with the Dolphin emulator, and with, I forgot the other one, I think, was it Dolphin, and it was Slippy was the other one, or I forgot what the other one was.
Usually with GameCube games, the main one is Dolphin. For both GameCube and Wii.
So I know with that one too, like, because there's no way to officially buy the physical Melee disc, there were actually
without paying a lot of money.
Yeah, like about like $100 from resale.
Probably more.
Like, I've seen,
like, seriously, the resale market is getting like really stupid the past few years. Like,
especially for GameCube.
Yep.
Yeah, GameCube especially is really bad. Because for whatever reason, Nintendo is just dragging their feet when it comes to re-releasing any sort of like remaster, remake of popular GameCube games.
And they've seen how like I guess how popular they can be with this Super Mario, like, 3D. What was it? Super Mario
3D All-Stars. That was a limited time release, by the way.
Yeah, both physical and digital.
Which, that made no sense at all.
Well, see, I thought it was originally going to be a test for if people would buy the GameCube versions and like the Wii games, like, kind of all bundled together. I thought they would expand that to either sell them separately or, you know, have like a Zelda collection. Because remember when they were announcing Skyward Sword, I forgot if it was you and me, Matt, or if I was talking just in general about, like, they would probably release. We were hoping like they would release that and like what was the other GameCube one? Wind Waker.
Wind Waker and Twilight Princess were GameCube. Yes. Skyward Sword was Wii.
Right.
But all three of them have HD remasters. But of course, with the Wii U eShop being closed, you can't get Wind Waker or Twilight Princess HD anymore.
Exactly.
Which, again, is like, I do not understand why that is. It's like part of providing a supply and demand is you gotta supply the demand. It's something that Nintendo especially, do not seem to understand.
It's like it's easy money, like right there on the table for them. Like, no, we're gonna ignore all that money that we could be making, and
we're just gonna let people complain at us instead, and we'll do nothing about it.
Well, let's make, what was that cardboard thing?
Labo.
Yeah, like let's make Labo instead of actually porting over these other games that would be really
that
popular.
They pretty much did next to nothing with.
Yeah, and even then, like, Labo isn't very compatible with Switch OLEDs.
Oh,
like, there's an issue with the screen where you can't even use it properly like you could with the original Switch.
Oh, but I was gonna mention really quickly too, like I guess with my Melee example too, like the huge downside of a loss of digital preservation as well with both Melee and also other games like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is it actually removes the ability to have tournaments for those games, or at least easy tournaments, because normally for those tournaments to actually like run, you would need an official copy of the game to make it legal to play. And if you don't have the official copy and you're trying to emulate it, you're technically, the entire tournament would be illegal to have both in person or online.
Yeah, because there was a Smash tournament that actually ran into that very issue you were mentioning, because they were trying to have Melee as part of the tournament, but Melee originally does not have it online, so they were trying to use Parsec, and Nintendo basically said no. It's like, you can't have your tournament.
And the same also with, I guess Marvel vs. Capcom 2, there's kind of a workaround, because if you have the original PS3 or I think Xbox 360 version, then you still can run a tournament on that, or like if you have the PS2 and like have an in-person one. But it's just like for a lot of these, in the more modern times, for a lot of these tournaments, you can't have them without having the original.
Well, yeah,
game.
not everyone is willing to shell out money for an Arcade One cabinet, as well as.
That was the biggest, like, why so many people were upset with that one. Because when it was coming out, everyone thought, okay, cool, they'll port it over to other systems too.
And they never did.
Yeah, and did you know the reason why they did that too? Why they couldn't? The arcade cabinets count as toys.
Yeah.
Like legally, and not as actual like the physical game media. So that's why all those.
They use that loophole.
Yeah, that's why like those little like emulated like consoles that are like those little arcade systems. Those are able to be sold as like toys compared to actual game systems or game cards.
Yeah, it's just a mess.
It's like it's leaving so much money on the table for these companies, and I know with some games like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, it's a licensing thing as to why they can't like re-release some of it, because like I think Capcom is like, sure, let's do it, but then Disney is like, like we have to license all these separate characters. I think since Spider-Man's in it too, Sony would need to give like it's okay to use the specific Spider-Man character unless he's somehow like still Marvel's property in games. I'm not sure how some of that works.
Well, because not only with because in 2, because you have Spider-Man, you have the X-Men, and a bunch of other characters that weren't part of the Marvel cinematic universe, because that was the issue they were running into with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, which is why that was kind of a bit of a problem. I know I know it's like corporate politics suck, basically, and I understand that at the end of the day the short answer is always going to be money. It's always going to be money, but it's like it's just kind of our way of trying to kind of wrap our head around just kind of how stupid all of this is, because this is the stuff that we didn't really had to worry about like a decade ago, or a couple decades ago, we kind of took the availability of various games for granted. But now it's becoming harder and harder to enjoy the same games that we wanted if they weren't like a milestone or a mega hit. And even then, there's no guarantee that the quality of those games would be the same as before, depending on how they're handled.
And it's continuing too, because even like with when you mentioned about like pretty big hits still having the possibility of being removed as well too. The Xbox 360, I think the Xbox One store just recently stopped selling certain games. I think, for example, a few of the Assassin's Creed games, like the older ones, aren't available for sale digitally on the storefront. So if you have a physical copy, you can still put it into the system and still run it, but they were removing them off of the store. I think a couple racing games, like the Need for Speed ones, ran into the same thing because of the licensing for the cars inside the games. So
the same thing for some of the Forza games as well.
Yeah.
So
and I
like
think
still
even on like more recent systems like the PlayStation 4, they just certain games are kind of made unavailable on a whim. Based on whether or not certain developers or publishers they're like, okay, well, there's no point having this on there anymore. I'm not sure if there's like a storefront fee or something that they regularly had to pay, or assuming that it doesn't automatically come off of the cut of the sales, and maybe the game isn't making any money, so it's like, okay, what's the point of having it on there anymore if no one's buying it? But yeah, it does really suck when it's just you have like a couple of games or maybe that DLC that you're always thinking, oh, I'll just get that later, and then one day you find out you couldn't get that anymore because they kind of lost interest in selling that particular game or DLC.
Because I saw that like
the money and of course the money that they are the money that they're not making or they're not putting into making these games available, they're obviously putting into doing whatever they can to stop any form of piracy, aka the only way some of these games can be made available. And it's like, obviously I'm not making a complete endorsement of emulation, because I'm the kind of person that always wants to try to actually purchase a game, because I want to actually support people that have made it. But when a game is suddenly not being made available, or like a working copy, or the preferred way to play it, you're not really leaving people with a whole lot of other options. If you want people to stop emulating, make the games in question available, and when you do make them available, make them playable. It's like I'm not even a business director, and it's like, this random nerd on YouTube and Twitch should not have to be the one to tell people this. Is what I'm getting at.
And what's I guess one of the scary things, I guess, in general too, of like, so even buying them digitally, you're not always like safe as to like having like the digital preservation, because sometimes it depends on where you buy them from. If you buy a key from someone, for example, and you're like, okay, cool, I have this game. If it's if they got it like illegally or like in a weird way, they could like actually remove it from either Steam or this actually happened recently with Microsoft, where now it was sold on the Microsoft Store, but they put the wrong price on the Microsoft Store in one country. I think it was, I forgot the country, but basically like it was a Forza pack that should have been $100, and they actually sold it for like maybe like $10 or like $1, something like really low. And like for about 1 hour, a bunch of people bought the game digitally, legally bought it, and it was in their accounts. But because the price was incorrectly typed in, Microsoft actually went back into each person's account like a month later, removed the game out, and refunded them the $1 back.
Hmm.
And so I guess so at least they got the dollar back. But the thing is, like, they showed that they do have the ability to go back into accounts and remove games out digitally, because it's just basically like just in your digital record, like you have this license, but with it being a license, it can always be revoked.
Well, yeah, you're technically buying a license to own. You're technically buying a license to use, and that license can always be taken away at any given time, which I think is also very apparent for games that require continuous updates. The live service games that are at an alarming rate are dropping like flies one after another, but that can easily be a subject all on its own.
Yeah, because that just happened with, what was it, Rumbleverse, Rumble City?
Rumbleverse, yeah. Rumbleverse is no more.
The one that they
Babylon's Fall is no more.
Oh, that was, yeah.
That didn't even last.
And even the weird thing too is I keep seeing disc of that being sold at different places, and it's like, wait, guys, you can't actually play this game anymore.
No, you can't.
What was? Oh, and
same
even
thing for what was it? Anthem. Same
oh
thing
yeah,
with that
Anthem.
game too.
Anthem.
Wait, Anthem closed?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even think it lasted a year, did it?
Oh no,
No.
it was still going. So technically, with Anthem, I think if you put in your disc, it still goes. There's just not much connectivity because it's still on the Xbox.
And they also canceled the whole roadmap as well.
Oh,
yeah.
true. Yeah, it's
you can only play the Overwatch sequel. You can't play Overwatch 1 anymore.
Yeah.
Yep, that's also cut off. Yeah, at least, say for instance, like with Valve, they still let you go back and play Team Fortress 1 with multiplayer. So, which I find kind of interesting, because that game came out in like late 90s.
Yeah, I think.
So I remember playing that way back in high school. So I guess, what do you guys think about emulation as a I guess as a last resort for some of these games?
Oh, it's perfectly understandable as a last resort. But of course, to those providing said resorts, the biggest thing is don't poke the bear. And unfortunately, some people that were providing said emulation, they obviously, they saw a business venture when they weren't supposed to see a business, when it wasn't supposed to be a business venture to begin with. Basically.
So I think like all those ROM sites should really just be, well, like you mentioned, like not profit sites like some people are using, but more of like an archive, like a community archive.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I think even internet archives are kind of they're kind of being called, not so much being called into question, but they are still kind of becoming under fire, because especially when it comes to corporations, there's not really much of a difference in their eyes, because of course, with various properties, they own the copyright to it.
Oh, true.
So it's, even though they're not selling it, they're still providing a game that could still at any point be on storefronts and store shelves. It's just they, for whatever reason, don't want to bother to. But hey, someday it might be on store shelves. We don't know when that's going to be, but it still might be. And I think it's kind of that line of thinking that kind of gives them a little bit more of advantage, especially in a legality sense,
Mm-hmm.
Which sucks, I know, but that's unfortunately the way it is.
I mean, that does make sense for certain games. Like I remember on the Xbox One, when the Microsoft acquired the rights to Killer Instinct,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those Killer Instinct games that didn't really have a home back in the day, they actually were relaunching them onto the Microsoft the what's it called, like the Xbox One store, and you can actually get them for free on Game Pass. Because if you download the main, like Killer Instinct, what's the new one? I forgot what the new name was called, like the Killer Instinct one that's on Xbox 3D. You
Mhm.
actually get the original ones, 1 and 2, with I think they have online capabilities. But so that's one of the situations where, like, yes, it does make sense for them to like copyright the old ones because they did actually bring them back. I think same with like the Ninja Turtles where they did the Cowabunga collection.
Mhm.
We actually like took the old games, actually like repackaged them.
Yeah.
But it's, I guess it's for some of those games where it's like
They're just
they
kind of
know,
sitting on them.
yeah, like they know that they're
Mhm.
not going to like do anything with those older franchises, and like either they should give us the opportunity to buy those games, or allow for people to emulate or
Yeah, unfortunately, there isn't really too much of a stable precedent for that sort of thing. It's like right now, it's just basically it's always been up in the air, but I think even more so now that it's becoming even more in focus with like each passing year, and as the push for digital, for providing digital service becomes more apparent. And I would say that could also be argued in regards to just streaming services in general, with like Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus. Well, it's not HBO Max or Discovery Plus. They're all together as Max now. Apple TV, and what have you. It's just like, one day the shows are on there and the other next now they're not. So
Yes, not exactly, but similar to how with Xbox Game Pass, they have games on there that are available at one point, but then they take it off. But you're still able to get them on the Xbox Store, just not as part of the Game Pass subscription.
yeah, but at least it's available for purchase.
Mhm.
Okay, so as long as it's part of the pass, you're at least able to try as much of the game as you want for free. But then when it's off the pass, that's when you decide whether or not you want to pay for it.
Mhm.
And I like that strategy, and I wish more, not just gaming companies, but companies in general, that's a good model that I wish they all did. Have like a good chunk of the library available for like trial that you cycle in every now and then,
Mhm.
and then have it available for purchase for those that want to actually own it.
Mhm.
It's just a shame that everybody has to be putting in like these arbitrary conditions or wait until the time is just right, whatever that time is, if even at all. Because as especially with a lot of particular libraries, like not just GameCube but also like PlayStation Portable, Vita,
Mhm.
good luck finding most titles on those platforms.
Mhm.
I mean Wii U probably too, but I think the Wii U had the benefit of having a lot of their titles being ported over to the Switch, or at
Mhm.
least the ones that a lot of people focused on. I know there are some that are probably dead, that are still kind of dead in the water, unfortunately, but
Yeah, 2 Zelda ports and Xenoblade Chronicles X, which I feel is the most criminal.
yeah. I mean, yeah, there's also Star Fox Zero for what it's worth, but
Yeah, but I don't know many people that actually enjoyed that game. So
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's still quite a bit of a mess, and you think with advances of technology, people that have that sort of well, not just people, companies that have that ability would have at least risen up, because for a while it seemed like it was looking pretty good. Like the Wii, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3 all gave very promising futures for digital preservation, and it was just straight up not being kept upkept as well as it should, or just completely dropped in other regards. Like, it's quite telling when Nintendo went from being like one of the best at preserving their titles digitally, and now they're kind of becoming one of the worst. Which is like, I don't get it. Why?
It almost feels like with Nintendo, it's as soon as they start using it as a way to prop up the Nintendo Online service, that's when they kind of lost like how they could actually like sell them individually. Because like now there's like, oh yeah, we're gonna add them into the service, and people will pay for a year for like $70 for the
well, yeah, and it also doesn't help that, you know, if you want any like third-party stuff, well, you gotta hope that that the third-party company releases like a collection of sorts, or like ports them, you know, digitally, or like does like a remake or a remaster, which there are plenty of. There, you know, a lot of companies are being really good about that, which kind of makes, you know, Nintendo look a little bit foolish by comparison. But I mean, you know, everyone's guilty of dropping the ball in regards to this in some form or fashion, whether it's just not making the game available, or whether it's releasing a port or a remake or master that is not up to par to what the previous game was. You know, everybody has their own baggage in some way.
And Matt, I wonder if too, like when you were mentioning about like remasters and things too, I wonder if that's actually hurting some of the digital preservation in terms of, like we were mentioning before of Grand Theft Auto. Like if they had the originals, everyone might buy the original version of the game, compared to like, oh wait, no, we have this new remaster that we put all this, you know, development time into.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I can understand that, but part of the only way that, you know, the whole point of a remaster is to create a better experience, whether it's slightly or greatly. You know, you're trying to create a renewed, refreshing experience for a new generation of platforms. And if you make an experience somehow worse, well, of course, people are going to go back to the original titles because, you know, they want something that works.
I think that's the thing, though, Matt. Like, I think that's why they might be removing the old ones. And not giving the ability.
I mean, yeah, sometimes they like to remove the old ones just so it's like, hey, we got this new thing of this old thing you like. Why don't you play the new thing of the old thing you like instead? It's not as good. Well, it's like, well, it's new. What
Or
about
like-
the old ones? Well, we're not going to make the old ones available anymore. Sorry.
I think there's like right now there's like something that's the exact opposite of what Nintendo is doing currently. Like a few years back in 2019, they remade Link's Awakening, and now Link's Awakening DS is going to be coming to NSO sometime this year. So it's like you can play the remake, or you can play the deluxe director's cut version that they released for the color, rather than the original that have a Game Boy. But I mean, pretty much the same game, just with color. So
yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with making both versions available, just to give the option to choose between the two. Or maybe, especially if they, create content on the internet, maybe they'll play both just for like a sake of comparison or something, But of course, for some companies, content creation is a little murky. Not as murky as emulation, but still it's like, oh well, people are making money playing this game that we made live or as an edited video. But that's a whole other thing. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we could add to this. Any other examples or any other points that you think that we missed?
Yeah, I think there's something that could be brought up. So whenever, and this is like, whatever they're going to be naming the next Nintendo system, whether it's Switch 2, or if it's something else like they've been doing with every other system they've had. Whether or not the system will be backwards compatible with Switch, and whether or not they will, I don't know, like allow for kind of like how with from like a PS4 to PS4 Pro, or like from a 4 to a 5, and allow like the upgrades, like whether it be from frame rate or resolution or anything like that, if Nintendo would do the same, or if it'd only be like a case of, hey, you can do that, but only if you have like a digital copy. Like maybe it might not run the same type of cartridge that we currently use.
Because I feel like backwards compatibility. I think, provider, any sort of not just console, but even like online store provider. I feel like they are kind of very begrudging when it comes to backwards compatibility. Like they're only doing it because they know that of the backlash that they'll get for not having it,
And if you want to talk about how it was back in 2013 with Sony and Microsoft, with what went on there, like you had it wasn't Phil Spencer at the time. It was who was the guy before? I think was it Don Maverick? I think was the guy who was before Phil Spencer. He likes if you want to play your old games like 360 or whatnot, then just buy a 360. Don't buy an Xbox One. Or it's like it's also the case like if you don't want to always be online, just buy a 360. And it's like if you want to be able to share games with your friends, Sony is just like, here we take the case, hand it over to this person. Boom, that's how you share your games. That's how you can have preservation instead of just being locked to only being able to play them when you're online only.
And now all three of them are they're kind of being like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back sort of deal.
Yeah,
like every time they'll do something good for like a good few years or so, and then after that they completely crap on all over it through something that's absolutely backwards, and it's like, why did you do this?
Yeah, this is like PS5 of course has backwards compatibility, the 4 did not, and then Xbox has had backwards compatibility in like every system they've had, but it took like a few years for the One to get it, because they had to just do a lot of updates to even get it to work correctly. But at least they made the attempt, when I'm sure Sony could have done the same with the 4.
Yeah, and I think it's all about making, the attempt that is kind of the important deal here, because and not only making the attempt, but also making the attempt it's in of itself worthwhile, because going back to the NSO, it could have had and it still can have a lot of value. It's just Nintendo really needs to stop drip feeding. They really need to stop drip feeding titles.
Yeah, if they did at the same pace that PlayStation did with like their monthly free games, that'd be different. Because we only get like maybe 1 to 2 games a month. Sometimes, and there have been a couple cases where we've got nothing.
Yeah, I know that just does not bode well at all.
And it's last month we didn't get anything, but we did in February and this month. So
yeah, and there really is no reason for it. It's like, even if maybe you didn't get Capcom and Konami to get them to catch on with the NSO to have a lot of their titles on, or other third parties and stuff, but it's like you still have plenty of first party titles that you could probably drop, especially if you want to negotiate, if you want to at least negotiations evolve with second party or third party partners to be like, hey, we really think it would be nice if we could have this game on here, da 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 da, but it's like, it really sucks when it's at times companies are, as much as we like them to focus on the exciting new stuff, we also don't want them to forget about the old stuff that got us to be excited for their new stuff in the first place. I think that's just kind of the overall message that we're trying to get across here. Because especially as the years go by, it's not easy to get the old stuff anymore.
Mhm.
Let alone get it working.
I was gonna mention really quick too, like so as a person who had the Xbox much longer than I've had like PlayStation, at least like the PS4 and
Mhm.
PS5.
Mhm.
The one reason that Xbox actually did do the backwards compatibility compared to, and I guess in a sense free because you just had to have your old disc,
Mhm.
that was the only selling point that they had for multiple years. Like
Mhm.
because their first parties were kind of failing in terms of like Sunset
Yeah.
Overdrive and things like that, Rise and different games.
Yeah.
So the only way to get people onto the Xbox One platform was like, oh, you guys have older games, you can play all of those onto the system itself, without just put the disc in and play
And
right
I think that's one of the selling points that they still kind of have
Mhm.
because, yeah, when you really think of Xbox, you don't really think of a lot of their first party titles. I think because it's just basically for the most part Halo, Gears of War, and Forza.
Ooh, and Starfield coming up.
Yeah, but that's
Well, yeah,
still
but
a
they
Bethesda
recently
game.
required that was that for the most part before they acquired Bethesda, and I
Mhm.
think they're also on the cups of acquiring Activision Blizzard and Blizzard as well. But
Yeah, supposedly by the
supposedly,
end of beginning or end of June, that deal is going to be sealed.
yeah. But
And
it's
even
like,
then, I don't think those games will still be exclusive because there's too much
yeah,
money
because
on the table.
they'll either be timed exclusive or they'll be like just in general, just they're gonna be made as available as they've always were,
Because they already made like at least from what I heard on the internet, a 10-year deal with Nintendo and a 10-year deal with like some other suppliers of like I think it was Amazon,
Steam.
Steam, yes,
Mhm.
like of like having the games on their platform for the Activision games. So like
Mhm.
when as soon as
No,
like the deal's
specifically Call of
official-
Duty.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Oh, it was Call of Duty. I thought it was also the Activision collections.
I'm not sure. I just know that they specifically mention Call of Duty whenever they put
Well,
out
I mean,
that
it's
PR
all that
statement.
Activision's been focusing on anyway.
Oh, true. Unless they bring back Rock Band. But yeah, like I guess like the companies seem to do like the actual like preservation when it becomes a selling point for their company.
Yeah.
And PlayStation and Nintendo haven't
Money.
like they haven't needed that for a while. That's why the only like the main preservation PlayStation has right now is the one that's on like isn't it like their highest tier for their online? It's
Yeah,
like,
their highest tier for PlayStation Plus.
yeah. I guess with Nintendo, it's like
I
only
mean,
the
it's
online.
basically kind of a more robust version of what Nintendo's got going with their Switch Online. But even then, I think we can all agree that Microsoft is the better of the three console-wise. Obviously, once you start adding in like, PC storefronts, Steam has them all out by a good mile.
Mhm.
I mean, I know other storefronts have been trying to kind of encroach on that for quite a while, specifically the Epic Games Store, but it's like it's not even close.
No.
And even Steam sometimes loses games too. Like I know, I actually got a key for this one game. I forgot. It's like based off of a British show, something Blinders. I forgot, but it's basically like there's a what's it called? They lost the rights to like the BBC show
Mhm.
for the game, so actually they were taking the game off unless you have a key for the game. That's the only way where you could still download it, but it was going to be removed from like the actual storefront itself.
And I mean, I can see that. Yeah, obviously, if you don't have the rights to something, you can't sell it anymore. That's just the nature of the business. But I think part of what makes it really stupid when someone clearly has the rights. They have always had the rights, and they don't exercise the rights to make things more available. That's where a lot of the gears start grinding, I mean, I obviously I can understand whenever there's a rights issue that's preventing something from being re-released or remade or remaster. Obviously the one of the biggest ones is Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And I think for a while, the Scott Pilgrim game kind of was rumored to kind of had that issue, but they managed to get it all cleared out for it to be re-released on newer platforms, which is good. I mean, it took them a while, but they did it, and I guess at some point, all it is just a waiting game at this point, but, some people have been waiting for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, maybe in even some cases 30 years for some games, but, it's just, people shouldn't have to wait this long for, companies to kind of sort that sort of detail out, especially if the company is a larger company that by all means should at least dedicate a small team for that sort of thing, you make millions, billions, or even trillions of dollars, probably billions, but maybe even, but more so like 10 or hundreds of billions. It takes a while for it to be like trillions. I think there's very few companies that can even have the coveted T as far as their earnings are concerned, but yeah, I mean that's pretty much, if you have the resources, use them. Please stop using it all on marketing for crying out loud.
And it's a big success too, like Matt, like even with the Metroid Prime, what's
remastered,
remastered, like it
that
took
they
them
didn't
so long.
credit the original dev team, by the way,
At all.
No.
Wow.
Which is stupid.
Mm-hmm.
That's a trend of remasters that has been kind of been getting me and a lot of other people, perturbed as well. Is that, it's like, if you're making a remaster of something, credit the original team.
Mm-hmm. It's like you guys aren't building the code from the ground up with these a lot of times. It's like you have the code and you're building off of that code. So,
Yeah, it's just...
wow.
Do they do that for the what was it? The Crash and Spyro remastered trilogies?
I don't know. I think, since I haven't really heard news on it, I assume that they credited the original team. But, maybe I'm misremembering, because I haven't really followed a lot up on Crash and Spyro.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So yeah, we're kind of nearing an hour. So any additional thoughts or any final closing remarks that you have, if you don't have any more to add?
I do have a quick question for both of you guys too. If you guys, I guess, have like either a top 5 or, well, actually probably, yeah, top 5 games that you would actually want preserved that currently you don't have a way to purchase. So, you like, are there any like hidden gems that you used to play all the time, but now you don't really have any way to buy them other than either emulation or finding a physical copy out there?
Okay. Well, I'll start off with I think the biggest one is just the Pokemon franchise in general, with a lot of their older stuff. It's crazy that the largest franchise in the world cannot seem to consistently preserve the majority of their older titles. And that's not even just the ones that require, like, adding in online link services and transferring in storage. A lot of their side games are very hard to come by.
True.
I guess number 2 would be kind of a lot of the sleeper hits, especially on the GameCube, like Custom Robo, Kirby's Air Ride, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, Eternal Darkness,
Thousand Year Door.
Yeah.
That Metal Gear Solid remake, Twin Snakes remake, made by the same team as the Eternal Darkness guys. and of course, for whatever reason, we're now gonna have to say Legend of Zelda: Wind Waker and Twilight Princess again because they haven't ported the HD remakes for those two games yet. Well, I mean, I guess Super Mario Sunshine technically counts because they made the only time that they remastered and ported that game a limited release. Again, what the heck? And let's see. I mean, I obviously listed more than 5 at this point, but I'm trying to. I think yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. I think there's still a good few. There's also a good few Dreamcast titles, like the original Soul Calibur, that could use a report or a remaster. I know they technically use Soul Calibur 6 as a soft reboot, and in a way, kind of took care of 1, 2, and 3 as far as event wise. I think, but it would still be nice to have the first 3 games come back in some capacity. I know 2 is obviously the biggest one, and they did do an HD online remake for PlayStation and Xbox, but of course, the Nintendo one isn't there, and of course, gotta fight as Link, man. Even though I say that as someone who's not a Zelda fan, but it had its novelty. Just like NBA Street Volume 3, where you play as the Mushroom Kingdom 14. That was quite a time. Let's see.
I have a few that definitely come to mind.
Okay, I'll leave it over to you.
One is, and it bothers me that was just left out of the Mario 3D collection, but Mario Galaxy 2, which I love them almost equally, but there are things I like in 2 more than I do in the first one.
Yeah, I don't understand why they left that out.
It's just a really good game. I think that the Galaxy duology is the best that 3D Mario has ever been. So just Galaxy 2 I'd like to be preserved in some way. Well, that and the first one, but mostly 2 because we never had that as a remaster. Another one would be the old Xeno games, specifically Xenogears and Saga 1 through 3, because Gears is stuck back on the original PlayStation and just the PS3 storefront. Xenosaga 1 through 3, you can only get those physically on PS2. There is no other way to buy them, not digitally, not anything, because they've never done official remasters. I'd say this is a game that I've never been able to play before, but I would like to one day, is Skies of Arcadia from Dreamcast and GameCube, because a lot of people want that. I'd like to see an actual remaster of it someday, which there has been rumors about.
Well, yeah,
such,
Sega's actually been doing a good job of reviving certain properties as of late. They're not putting all of their eggs on Sonic anymore, thankfully. Even though
Sonic and Yakuza. But...
Well, Sonic and Yakuza. Sonic, Yakuza, and Hatsune Miku. Well, the licensing Hatsune Miku games, of course, Sega doesn't own the actual Vocaloid. They just own the rights to the games. But yeah, it's nice that they're finally doing more with their other properties, especially if the leak is anything to go by. The recent leak,
other 2 games. Gosh, I'm trying to think. I did mention F-Zero GX earlier because it's not like that Nintendo does anything with F-Zero nowadays.
Yeah. It would be a good way to get interest backed up. That's for sure.
Yeah, and this is encompassing more than just one game, but just any Tales of a game that was on the PS3 and further in the past, PS2, PS1, just make that available on modern platforms. Tales of Xillia, Tales of the Abyss, Tales of Tales of Destiny, stuff like that. They
also need to do a better job than the recent remaster of Tales of Symphonia.
I don't want to start on Symphonia. From what I heard, that the reason that that game has issues such as with like 30 frames is that that's based off the PS2 version, and the GameCube one actually did play at 60 frames pretty much consistently, but they lost a source code for that. Hence why we have this version that is based off of the PS2 version, which was originally based off the PS3 remaster, which was also the same one that we got on Steam like 2015 or so. So yeah, Symphonia does not have a good history with remasters.
Yeah,
Best way to
kind of
play
like
is
kind
GameCube
of like
version,
Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. They do not
Yeah, it's
have a
like-
good history.
Yeah, it's like either find an original GameCube copy of Symphonia, or just, I hate saying this, two other options. You mod the Steam version, or you just emulate the GameCube version. That's really the best way you have for trying to play Symphonia at this point.
It's unfortunate that it kind of that in some cases it does have to come to that. You know,
They can't make a good remaster for that game. It doesn't exist.
yeah, yeah. I know the feeling as someone who's a fan of the two Sonic Adventure games. I mean, they had it right the first time with GameCube, but it seems like every time they keep going off of those, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And I mean, Sega in general they struggle with ports and remasters at times.
Unless you're Yakuza.
Unless you're Yakuza.
I mean, the Yakuza remasters and remakes are great. I mean, no
Yeah.
issues. It's just every other franchise, minus some of the Atlas stuff, because
Well, Atlas does their own thing.
Yeah.
They've been doing their own thing before Sega bought them, so
Mhm.
Atlas, yeah, they're doing just fine with their remakes and remasters. So.
Oh.
So, any games that you would like to see make a comeback, Phil?
Yeah, so mine would be to start off with for the Game Boy Advance. Oh wait, sorry. I had my water bottles kind of like messing up my other screen. So like the what's it called? Pretty much like the original Fire Emblem, and also the I think it was Sacred Stones or Sacred. Yeah, I think Sacred Stones. for
That's
the-
actually
Both of them are confirmed for NSO.
yeah,
Just
So-
not separately.
yeah.
I know that 7, the one that we first got localized, is coming to NSO within the coming months. Sacred Stones hasn't been confirmed, but it's gonna come anyway.
Yeah, I
so, you
figured
know.
it's coming, but yeah, that's kind of another thing, especially because a lot of the earlier Fire Emblem titles we never got,
Mhm.
and even with the NSO, it's still only Japan only in some cases.
Yep.
So
And then there was the one that was special for, I think it was like a special edition. I forgot.
it was basically a local, like the only time they actually decided to localize Fire Emblem for the NES, and it was a digital release that was also limited time only.
And it was
What?
physical, so they do have a physical version. But the
Actually, it
physical,
wasn't. It was in like a special collector's edition, but the version of the game was just a download code.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was just a download code.
I would know because I got it just for collector's sake.
Mhm. Yeah, I was going to buy that one, but like someone had it for like $70. Like, but it's just the code.
Yeah, I just got it
Because
digital.
it went so much higher after it was initially like.
Yep,
the
yep,
I mean, it has good
scalping.
physical goodies, so
But
Oh.
yeah, I mean, so yeah, Fire Emblem could definitely use some digital preservation, especially with. Actually, nowadays, most of their titles, including Awakening, Fates and Echoes.
I think Fates has the worst of it because you can't even get like Revelations anymore
Yeah, you can't
because
even
that was a
get.
digital only title.
That was a digital only title, yeah.
Unless you have the actual physical special edition, which has
Which I do, but
Birthright,
yeah,
yeah,
it's
same,
like but
Fate's
it's-
Birthright and Revelations all in one.
which I
So
mean,
even
they should have
comes down to,
just
like
done.
any DLC like for any game on
Yeah.
those two systems is even available anymore.
Yeah.
So my other ones would be Marvel vs. Capcom 2, definitely.
Mhm.
Smash Bros. Melee, definitely. Because there needs to be a way to play those for tournament's sake too.
There isn't even a way to play 64 outside of the Wii Virtual Console.
Yeah,
Like,
it was never even on Wii U.
Yeah, it wasn't even on Wii U.
That's one I'm kind of hoping they do somehow bring over for the online service, just as one big like, hey everybody, at least you could play this one on the digital service. Because I feel like that would draw a lot of people into the online for that.
Let's see. I think next year it would be the 25th anniversary of the original Smash Brothers 64.
Yeah, it was released in '99. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would hope that would be something that they announce, but that would be next year.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just basically a roll of dice. Next year would be the year to do it, but if they don't, then it's like they probably wouldn't have any incentive to do it any other year after that either.
Oh, and then two other ones would be, so these two are going to be extremely obscure. But one would be Def Jam Fight for NY, only because that one for the fighting game community too. Like a lot of people wanted to play that one continually as well, but that one's very much locked to the original PS2, or I think GameCube had a version, and I think PSP had a really short version of it. And then the last one is like more of a personal one, but Marvel. Wait, what's it? Marvel: The Imperfects. I think I have it for the PS2. Have no other way to play on any other system, even just the one-player mode. I feel like that would be a great game to like have people be able to play again, because it kind of was a hidden gem, so at least to me. So that because a lot of elements from that game ended up being transferred over to the what's it called? The new one that they had, like the Avengers game, like some of the open world traversal and things too. So like,
yeah, but the Avengers didn't really work out so well.
Well, because that was the live service version. Yeah. The other one was more.
Like, yeah, that's kind of the other thing. Anything that's like licensed, basically, unless if it's like a very like well-renowned game that people have very fond memories of, it's basically a rigged coin flip if they ever even get preserved or not, because it's like in some cases they will put in the effort, in other cases they won't.
And what I always wonder why companies don't do just really big collections, like for example Taken. Like I know like now they're going to Taken 8, but this would be a good time to like release like Taken 3, it's 1, 2, and 3 on like one collection. I'm not sure with some of the other ones if they could like port those over, because like when it starts to get to the PS2, it's like a little bit more graphically intense. But at least with those like original ones, to have those be available as a collection to really say like, oh, we've come this far with Taken over into like the new modern day version.
Especially because there is like a story kind of holding all those together. So even if the story is just basically there's those dastardly Mishimas at it again.
Because they kind of did like a version of, well, I think they're doing a version of kind of like the digital preservation in the one big bundle with the Street Fighter 6 game. Because I heard that, and I wasn't able to play the beta, but I think that in the little virtual console things, you could play the old ones against people online while you're waiting for the new one, or like not while you're waiting, but like if you're tired of those matches, you can play the old ones. I heard that. I haven't been able to play that part yet, but
interesting.
Yeah, I heard like that was their version of like, oh, you could play Street Fighter 2 like while you're waiting for a couple matches and things. So yeah, but those would be my main selections for like games that they should report over to other consoles to give them kind of more life than they had in the past too. Because there's like no way to like buy those games anymore, and some of them are like locked specifically to their original systems.
Yeah. Well, that I feel like I think that basically gives us a good kind of perspective on kind of what our what our thoughts are regarding digital preservation. Obviously, as new things happen, things will change. Either reaffirming the points that we've made, or maybe give us more reason to be a little bit more optimistic. Who knows? Who knows what? Who knows what they'll do next? Hopefully, good things.
Oh, Matt,
But
I have a super quick question for you guys too before we close.
Yeah.
Too. What, I guess, for digital preservation, what would you guys pay for, like, if they were to preserve a game from the past, like for example, like Metroid Prime 2 or the Xenoblade Chronicles game, like if it was ported directly as it was in the past over to current systems, how much would you guys pay for the ability to play that full price of like what's it, $59.99 nowadays, or would you guys like, should it be discounted where it's like the $39.99?
I mean,
if we're
I
talking
guess.
about, like, I'm sorry.
I mean, I would like to say discounted, because if it's just a straight port, then yeah, it should not cost as much as, your average new game nowadays. But, if I really want to scratch that itch, and if I have the funds available, I'm just getting it. I probably shouldn't, but I probably will.
Yeah, so if we're talking about like Prime 2 getting the same remaster treatment, 40 no question would be a good price. If we're talking about that Xenosaga trilogy, like maybe 40 as well, maybe 50, and that's assuming that Bandai Namco would go the same route that they're doing like some of their other remasters, because like say with the Baten Kaito's remaster they're coming out with, I think that's going for 40, and that's like a duology. I'm not sure what the price is, but I think it's 40. So yeah, I think like 40 or 50 for like a remastered trilogy of Xenosaga would probably be what I'd say.
And I guess the reason I was wondering too is because like with the Super Mario All Stars game, with that when that originally came out for about $60, it really was only like $20 per game. Like if you like divide it up from the three. So I was wondering, like, what would be a good price point for like a remaster of certain games?
I mean,
because Marvel
it
vs.
is kinda-
Capcom 2, for example, could come out and it would be $60, and a whole bunch of people still buy it because they've been waiting for so long with it.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's always been a debate whether or not games should even be costing like $60 or even more, because there's plenty of games out there now costing $70.
Mhm.
So it that's a whole other topic all on its own. I mean, but it's like, if I want to get the game, I'll get it. Probably not the wisest or best mentality, especially considering that, I'm still living with my folks and I still got bills to pay and I already have a crazy backlog of games. But, if I want to scratch that itch, I'll do whatever I can to scratch that itch,
'Cause I was just wondering, like, because I wonder if why they don't kind of re-preserve, like kind of reissue certain games, is because they don't know how to price them properly too. Like, because like some games, like for like when I was mentioning Tekken 1, 2, and 3, if they re-release those, I don't think they could like charge, like for example, like $20 per Tekken, because those are like the older ones anyway. So like, would they do 10? And like,
yeah, but if it was just a, I feel like pricing is like one of the absolute last things, and that alone probably isn't enough to hold a game in the vault, so to speak. I think a lot of it is either licensing or whether or not they can reliably translate the source code from the original game to have it work on newer platforms. Those are usually the two big things.
Do you ever think that maybe they don't re-release games because they don't know if they've aged well? And like maybe they like, cause I know, like, for example, like if you compare Tekken 7 and 8 to like Tekken 1, 2, and 3, like the looks of them and also some of the gameplay wise, they might not match up as well.
Usually when you get an older game that, regardless if it's like if it aged well or not, you're usually getting it because of nostalgia.
Mhm.
Again, like the first couple of generations of Pokemon are like the most immediate example to this, or pretty much most NES titles.
Oh.
So yeah, but yeah, I'm kind of starting to kind of fade a little bit here. So just so I don't end up yawning the remainder of this discussion, I'm gonna call it a little close here. So thank you to everyone who has joined in with us watching. Hopefully we provide an interesting conversation to a topic that you probably heard about before, but just a different perspective between three random nerds on the internet and all that. So all right, anything else you two got to say to close off?
No, thank you for watching, everyone.
I have nothing either, but thank you for inviting us, though.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Matt.
Yeah, so thank you for joining with me, Phil and Reeve, and hopefully we'll be doing another one of these discussion videos again in some capacity soon. But until then, I hope everyone has themselves a wonderful night and take care.